Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is our second installment of our Sign Up for Portugal webinar series. So yeah, it's an amazing opportunity to have everyone joining us. Today we're going to be speaking about relocating and starting and growing your business in Portugal. Definitely something that the series is going to be continuing on as we go forward. The purpose of this series was to come together to help international entrepreneurs learn more about Portugal, our startup ecosystem, and how to kind of engage with the actors within that ecosystem and set up shop and be operational on the ground. So just to introduce, providing a presentation on the Portuguese ecosystem, and he'll be later joined by Fernando Jardim, who's the community manager at Lisboa. So André, we're going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And let's see if you guys can see my screen. Everything good? Yeah, so
it's amazing.
Let's start this. I usually call this presentation What to Portugal because it's kind of my way to go over what's Portugal all about when it comes to entrepreneurship and startups. So let's just jump into this, and well, I hope that you enjoyed this small presentation. So about Portugal, I usually refer to the country as a triple threat country, not because we're threatening, quite the opposite. We're really welcoming, and that's one of the threatening parts about what Portugal is. What is good about Portugal is that we are welcoming culture, and we are really open to onboarding people coming from abroad. And we also have talent, not enough, but we do have talent. And we have the right infrastructures to actually onboard this startup ecosystem and make it grow. And that's how we've been doing it, actually. So about the ecosystem, we have at this point, we have 4 unicorns. One I like to call it a decacorn, which is OutSystems. OutSystems just reached the 10 billion evaluation this year, which is quite amazing. We also had 3 unicorns, Farfetch, Talkdesk, and Fidzai. Fidzai is the most recent one. We're obviously, as Portuguese, we're really proud to have another one. And we have other up-and-coming startups and scale-ups that we're sure, or at least here at Startup Portugal, we're always betting that they will reach this evaluation soon enough. One of which is Landing Jobs. So I can't say good enough stuff about them, and well, I don't need to. Well, in my categories, obviously, here he is. He always likes to jump in my presentations. About the ecosystem, Startup Portugal actually has a sister initiative that is the RNI, so the National Network of Incubators. The National Network of Incubators is really important to make sure that companies thrive in our ecosystem, because it makes sure that the innovation ecosystem is a nationwide strategy. It has the same strategy for all incubators and makes sure that incubation services are ready to onboard companies from everywhere, and this is really essential. And as we know it, when the RNI started, we had 120 certified incubators, and now we have 162, which is quite amazing. And in these entities, at this moment, we have around 3,000, at least it's what we estimate, 3,000 incubator startups, which is quite great. And all of these companies, as per Startup Portugal reporting in 2018, generate 1% or over 1% of our GDP, and they are employing over 25,000 people. This is quite amazing if we just factor the fact that Portugal just got through a crisis not that long ago. And it kind of makes for the role that startups played in the recovery and the economic recovery of Portugal over the last 10 years, I would say so. Obviously, 2020 was quite confusing in that sense, but I mean, startups, given their digital output and how digital they are, obviously they haven't suffered as much as other types of companies. So I mean, I'm sure that things are perfectly fine, and just factoring in how much money they raised in 2020, I'm sure that they're fine, because it's not that much. I mean, it's around the same level over the last few years. And if we just look at how much it means per capita, we're at the same level of ecosystems such as Germany, France, and above Spain, which is quite amazing if we just think about how many people live in Portugal and how many people live in these countries, you know. So yeah, moving on. About the ecosystem, it's really important to think of Portugal as, first off, our English level is really amazing. We're the 7th country in the ranking of the English Proficiency Index. We are considered the 3rd safest country in the world. Our fiber optic connectivity is off the charts, and we have a really fast internet speed, which is quite amazing. And yeah, I think we covered this part. So just to kind of sum things up, Portugal is off the charts. So I think it's it's a no-brainer. So about Startup Portugal, I know that Stephanie talked a little bit about it, but Startup Portugal, the role that we play in this ecosystem is making sure that all the stakeholders are connected. So we design some initiatives to be implemented by other agencies and by ourselves. We make sure that the national strategy of the government, of the Portuguese government, is being actually applied to the ecosystem. And we make sure that startups and entrepreneurs are represented by the government, and that the government hears them, is what we do the most. Besides that, we also promote startups. We do it not only here in Portugal, but we also do it by taking them abroad. And yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. So about our initiatives, it's important to say that our initiatives go from the pre-idea or the idea phase, pre-MVP, all the way through the going abroad phase and internationalization phase. But I think that for this specific webinar, I would like to highlight the 200M, which is a really great tool for raising investment here in Portugal, which is a co-investment fund, where startups based in Portugal can raise money from investors coming from abroad. And what happens is that the Portuguese government gets into the play with half of the money raised, which is quite cool. Well, the Sign Up for Portugal initiative, I mean, if we are here, you're quite aware of what it is. Also really important, I think one-stop shop is obviously essential in that sense. It's what brings us here. And it's actually Stephanie who will be conducting the whole webinar. She's managing the one-stop shop, making sure that we meet with all entrepreneurs, that we hear them, that we have all the information that they need to scale up in Portugal. Also really important are the startup and tech visas, which are visa initiatives that we design specifically to attract entrepreneurs and highly trained professionals. So the startup visa is you want to set up shop or relocate your company or open up a company in Portugal. This is the program that you want to go through. And if you're just obviously quote unquote, but if you are a highly trained professional and you are looking to onboard a startup in Portugal, the tech visa would be the right program for you. So it's a fast track for you to join a company that already has certification. And yeah, I think it's the best way to go. The e-residency is currently under development. We plan to launch it still during the year of 2021. And it's all about becoming a digital resident of Portugal. So I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. You just go into an app, you provide your information, and soon enough you'll be a resident of Portugal. You'll be able to open up a bank account, to use the NHS, to obviously open up a company, all without needing to come to Portugal, which is the goal. We also have a bunch of tools that are really cool, such as a Startup Hub. At this point, we have an ongoing partnership with Deal Room, where you can just log in and see what's going on in Portugal in terms of investment, what startups are hot at the moment. I really recommend that if you want to know a little bit more about what's going on in Portugal, go into the Startup Hub. The website is right over there, so startuphub.pt. Just go there, go into the dashboard and have a look of what's going on in Portugal, what's hot. I think it's really cool. The Era and I obviously go into the website, see where you have incubators, try to understand a little bit about what they're doing. I think it's really important. We also have a podcast we just launched in English, so if you want to listen to it, I mean, I'm a little bit biased, but I think it's really cool. And just, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. There's a bunch of initiatives that I think are really cool. We did, actually with Fernando, we did a series of webinars. And yeah, there's something that I'm really proud of, just to finish it off. So the Startup Nation Standard is something that kind of, well, it was the work of our president, Simon Schaeffer, over the last 2 years, working with the European Commission to make sure that Europe is a startup-friendly continent and it's future compatible. So it's all about 8 points that go from the capacity or to create a company that needs to be obviously more democratic, faster, and more efficient, to how stock options work, to how easy it is to do R&D. So I think that obviously you should check it out as well. And it's amazing because it's an European-wide commitment to make Europe competitive when it comes to go head-to-head with China and the USA. So I think that kind of sums up what Portugal is all about. So if you have any doubts, I'll be here in the end of the webinar for the Q&A. And yeah, Fernando, do you want to go on and talk a little bit about what's hot in Lisbon?
Hello, everybody. Thanks very much for the invitation. I'm really, really happy to be here, especially alongside with people that I like the most, like James. Hello, James, again, and André, and now Pedro. Cool. I'm just going to share my screen. Sorry, it took a while because I was replying the chat. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Full screen. Share screen. Can you all see my screen? Can someone just say, yes, Fernando, I can?
Yeah, you're good, man.
Thanks very much. So I just would like to ask for people in the chat, where are you based? I always like to know if it's people coming from Europe or if people are coming from Brazil, like myself. So please just feel free also to make comments, ask questions and things like that. So nice to meet you all. I am Fernando and I work for Made of Lisboa. I'm not going to spend much time talking about Made of Lisboa, but pretty much it's the Lisbon City Council that looks after the startups and innovation and creativity industries. Usually I am the community manager and usually I run this presentation with João, who is a project manager. So I love starting this presentation with this 1,000 of articles saying Lisbon is becoming the hot tech hub in Europe. A lot of people are coming to Lisbon. Is Lisbon the next Berlin? Why Lisbon is the Europe work and play capital? So there's a lot of things going around Lisbon recently, and a lot of people ask themselves, so why everyone is choosing Lisbon to work from? So one of the first answers is really easy. So we are in Portugal. So as André just said, we have decacorns, have unicorns. There is a whole mindset of the government actually making startup industry a really big thing, a part of the GPG, startups hiring a lot, and we have a lot of companies moving to the city. I'm gonna tell you a little bit over, and this definitely impact Lisbon City. So this map was the incubators and accelerators that we have by 2011. So the country faced a massive crisis in 2011. And by the time the government was thinking, okay, how can we rebuild the economy? And many of the drivers were through innovation, sustainability, tourism, and so on. So by the time they created Startup Lisboa, and for us in Lisboa, that's where we assume that the ecosystem started by the creation of Startup Lisboa. So if you look this other map, this is 2018, a lot of incubators, accelerators, massive companies have settled down in Lisbon. And Lisbon ecosystem becomes something totally different. So in 8 years nowadays, we have over than 28 accelerators and incubators in town. We have a lot of corporates and it's quite vibrant ecosystem. And what I like the most about Lisbon, it's really, really well connected, which means the players know each other. So there is a popular saying here around that we say that we are 2 emails away from the person that, if you don't know the person, you are 2 emails away from the person that you want to talk. And I can give you an example. So back home, I'm from São Paulo, Brazil. I went to organize an event called Startup Weekend, and it was a tourism event. And I was trying to do something in a tourist location, but it was very hard to connect with the right people because imagine, so many people were trying to reach them that was really, really hard. And here in Lisbon, I managed to get the airport for free for 2 days to run the event and even pay the food. So, and it was honestly what took me was 2 emails. So that's what I like about the ecosystem. Everybody knows each other. Everybody wants to help you out. If you are accelerated at Startup Lisboa, for instance, they're going to refer you for Portugal Ventures. If you are accelerated by Demian, they will refer you for Startup Lisboa. So here is really, really a really hot place to start and to validate your business and then scale to Europe. And because of this, Lisboa is one of the most competitive and creative cities in the whole Europe. And I'm going to show you some data that reflects that. So Lisboa accounts for 36% of the GPD in the country. We have over than 300,000 companies, which is 39%, which is 29% of the whole companies in the country. Also, as I already mentioned, we have 28 incubators and creative hubs, and more or less half of the creative and digital companies are based in Lisbon. Other than that, we are really proud to say that we are quite a diverse city. So 51% of the whole expat population, we have James here, who is Australian. We have myself, who am Brazilian, and I work for the Lisbon City Council. So 51% of the whole expat population, which is around 300,000 people, are actually based in Lisbon. And this is actually 24% above the national average. Here we go. And there was somebody in the chat asking, I think that was Dave, asking like, oh, where can I find data about the cities and so on? So this is a really famous website alongside Digital Nomads. It's called Nomad List. And that's pretty much the mother of God, the source, where, so this is the mother of God of the digital nomads. And here we can find all the information about many cities. And Lisbon ranks in the first place alongside all the cities in the world as the friendliest place for digital nomads to start their lives. And why is that? It's not just good internet connection. Everybody speaks English. Here, if you come by yourself, it's really easy to connect and make friends. Like there's Lisbon Digital Nomads meetups happening on Thursdays. If you're thinking it's more creative industry, there's creative mornings happening each Friday in the month. So it's really, really easy actually to make friends, connect, and foster business connections. Despite that, population in Lisbon is one that has the highest degrees in Europe. So 34% of the population got a university degree, which is 8 points above the national average. And we have almost 150,000 undergraduates currently studying. Out of them, 23,000 are actually international students. We are also quite welcoming on our universities. And it's not just numbers and market, but despite that, we also have 300 days of sunlight, which is great for people like me that I am Brazilian and I hate the cold. Honestly, it's a really nice place to work and play. And prior to COVID, we have almost 50 new companies opening a day. So getting to the second part of my presentation, which is lifestyle. So I am a surfer and Lisbon is surrounded by amazing beaches. So we have also beautiful landscapes. This is Belém Tower, definitely a must see. And Lisbon is really well known as the city of the 7 hills, which is great. You got like awesome views and pinky sky. And honestly, it's breathtaking. Other than that, if you just cross the bridge, we are in Caparica coastline, surfers paradise, beautiful places, a lot of different little cities with quite awesome culture. And what I like the most about Lisbon is that, so I'm from São Paulo and I used to work 6 kilometers away from my home. which is not really far away, right? But I used to take at least 1 hour and 30 to go work. Here, if you live by Setúbal, which is an awesome place, other side of the river, 60 kilometers away, it's gonna take you only 50 minutes to arrive in town. So it's great connections, mobility-wise, you know, like you never take longer than 20 minutes to go anywhere around Lisbon, which is great. And it's quite a live city. So at the end of my presentation, I'm gonna show that Lisbon is the second city that receives the most international events. So there is always a lot of things happening. Festivals, free concerts, summer is especially occasion, you know, people want to be outside. You see a lot of people usually outside Corona times, you see a lot of people outside enjoying the lives at the parks, at the beaches, or having a beer. So because of that, Lisboa was elected as one of 21 places of the future, if you take in consideration quality of universities, infrastructure, security, and so on. And because we got like a great pack of features, actually Lisboa is pulling a lot of foreign tech investment. A lot of companies are being invested in the country. And that just said, but we have last year we had over than 370 million of euros being invested here. So getting to the end of my presentation, just an article from Washington Latest saying that, like, look, because people are not based in the place that they need to be anymore, a lot of people are actually leaving the massive startup hubs and they're actually relocating to Lisbon because they want to live in a place, they want to work in a place they would like to live. So that's me. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Fernando.
That's great. Thank you so much, Fernando, and thanks for joining us. That was really cool. That was really informative. André, thank you as well. That was, yeah, very well put, guys. So we definitely understand now the amazing opportunities and what Lisbon and Portugal has to offer entrepreneurs from around the world and kind of what they can expect when they arrive. But one thing that we don't really talk enough about is kind of why they should, well, yes, now we know why, but what happens when they move? Like, what is the process? How do they come over? The nitty gritty practical details that people are looking for answers for. So for today, we're going to be having a panel discussion. We're going to be joined by James Muscat, who's the CEO and founder of Moviinn, which is a relocation company here in Lisbon. Also, we are joined by Pedro Castro, who is the head of business at Landing Jobs. They're all about kind of matching tech talent on their marketplace with opportunities in the country. So together, we're just going to introduce a little bit about how you can relocate and how you can grow your company in Portugal. So just to start off, we're going to take a look at the first question. So towards James and Pedro, when thinking of relocating to Portugal, what are the first steps people should kind of take into account when starting or relocating a company? James, I'll let you start this one.
Start with that. Okay. I guess like initially, like we get this every day, and one of the questions is location. And so do I go to Lisbon or am I going to Porto? And I guess traditionally that's been, you know, it's either Lisbon or Porto. And we're still getting a lot of people coming down. You know, the reasons behind this are plentiful. I mean, in terms of anything from, you know, what are, especially from the US, for example, what are the connections in terms of flights? Like, who's got more flights? Is it Lisbon or Porto? Lisbon or Porto? So that comes into play. I think that, for example, Fernando had touched on the whole talent pool as well. And obviously, yes, there's been this concentration of, you know, them being the two biggest cities, Lisbon and Porto. I love both cities, by the way. Just as I am a FC Porto supporter, but I've been a long-standing citizen of Lisbon. But it's been that, you know, like, where is the talent? Where are the universities? So yeah, these are like, there are many more. Obviously, we touched on lifestyle, you know, quality of life, lifestyle. But I think what we've seen in the last, let's say, 9 months is because of this sort of remote movement, people that are, I mean, we're a relatively small country, right? So Portugal is the same size of my state of Victoria, maybe a little bit bigger. Much more diverse much more fun as a whole. Nothing against Melburnians. Yeah, I love Melbourne. But I mean, you know, you can really be in Setúbal, for example, or going out to Cascais or further in the interior of the country. And this is something which is really starting to grow now, right? The government has had a number of incentives in order to provide better infrastructure, whether it's, you know, incubators or whether it's co-working spaces, but there are a number of also financial incentives that have been helping push or open up the interior of the country, right? So that's been pretty cool. So we always like to let people know, because we are based in Lisbon, but we work the whole country, right? So both continental Portugal and obviously our amazing islands of Açores and archipelagos of Açores and Madeira. And so we really try and give people a full overview of all these different places. So yeah, I think location is starting to change. Yeah, I think that's a big thing that's happened over the last 9 months. But as I mentioned, you know, talent is a thing, and you know, talent doesn't need to be, you know, concentrated in the cities. Although, you know, people do love, you know, the Lisbons and the Portos of Portugal because of the, you know, Fernando said something before, and you know, I always say Portugal and Lisbon or Porto is just big enough but small enough, right? You can really, that 2 email thing, I'm definitely going to start using that, Fernando. That's fantastic. Yeah. And everybody's just so open, and, you know, you can really meet so many people, and building that personal and that professional network, just, it happens. Yeah. You know, you have the size is there, the attitude is there, the mix and the diversity is there. And that, you don't really, you know, I've lived in about eight different countries and 8 different cities around the world. And although I do love every place that I have lived in, you know, Portugal has definitely something going for it in that sense. And when we talk about startups and starting up, right, or really sort of connecting, we do need to network and connect and sort of get things going. Sometimes we say, you know, what people do in 18 or 20 years abroad, when you're moving to a new country, you want to get things done in about a month or 2. So you really need to accelerate that process, and everybody's willing to do that. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, that big enough but small enough is definitely a very important factor. And as I mentioned, in terms of location, there were a lot of questions around there, but what we are starting to see is that this the new remote, or the accelerated remote phenomenon is allowing for people to go down to, I think someone mentioned Castelo Branco, or going down to the Algarve, or being in Lisbon for half of the year and then going down to the Algarve. I mean, there's a lot of mixing going there. So we're, you know, even the Algarve is only, what, 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours away from Lisbon, and you have your international airport there down there as well. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, I would say that those are sort of the big questions, but there is a change happening at the moment.
That's so true.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
I totally agree with James. So when I first moved to Portugal, I moved to a hostel first to try to find a nice place to live. And it was the hardest place for me to actually choose a hostel, because all the hostels were so amazing and they were all like quite cost effective. And I was shit. Like, I feel like some of the hostels, I felt like, you know, 4-star hotel. So definitely there is a lot of people that live around Lisbon, like Ericeira, Cascais, and Cascais is only a train line, right? It's 40 minutes away. Or Sintra, or even like Porto. So I have a friend that he has a business in Porto actually, and it's 3 hours by bus. So what happens, like some of the days he wakes up at 6, he's there at 9. He works pretty often and come back. So there's a lot of beautiful places around the big cities. And like, look, you don't need to be based in Lisbon to have access to Lisbon network. Of course, it helps if you go to a happy hour. Then you want to go back to your place, but then that we have all the hostels and hotels that are really cost effective. So you can stay 1 or 2 nights in the city. That's in case of hangover.
That's so true, yeah. You're right. Can I also just ask, because like James, you mentioned that people are kind of venturing out towards remote work, kind of no one's really just focusing on specific regions for hiring. Pedro, what would you suggest entrepreneurs could do to look for local talent if that's going to be the case? If everyone's kind of spread across the country, what are the best platforms or tools that they could use to find local talent?
Well, I mean, I'll definitely agree with both Fernando, James, and even André in the beginning when it comes to the fact that talent does not need to be based in Lisbon or Porto at the moment. That's also why, for example, you're seeing even Leiria, you have Lovis, La Redoute, and a lot of companies also considering to set up shop there. In the end of the day, and I'll definitely agree with James, before the first question, companies would also ask us, what would you say, Lisbon or Porto? At the moment, it's more of an issue, which hybrid policy will I have in the future? Because this really depends, right? How are your employees in Portugal going to work? Will you require them to go to your office? How often per week? And maybe depending on those cases, it might actually be worth to go to another spot who, like Fernando said in the chat, I mean, all throughout Portugal, you'll find very good broadband. You have 4G pretty much everywhere and the 5G kicking off. And so I guess that really also helps. When it comes to finding the talent, what I see most companies struggling when they start hiring in Portugal is awareness, right? I mean, it's very natural. You just landed, you want to start hiring. How do I, where's the speaker phone? How can I start saying that I'm hiring? Please come to me. And I definitely believe that it has to do with the communities, right? There's also a lot of communities in Portugal in tech. I mean, Landing Jobs works with tech talent. And in tech, of course, there are very niche communities for everything you can dream of. You have Google Developers Group, a very active chapter here in Portugal, and so many other that I'm being quite unfair by not referring them here, but trying to move on. I'll definitely say that you have to look inside the communities. You have great universities in Portugal as well, as was already referred. So the campus recruitment is also a very nice reality. But in the end, when it comes to awareness, I definitely believe you need to be where your talent is. And so you either do that through communities, and when I mean communities, I mean sponsorship, I mean being present, I mean attending the happy hours, as you're saying, or I'm also saying promoting and contributing to those communities. Do you want to attract, let's go with the mobile developers? Well, then why don't you start to create content and host events and dynamize events around how cross-platform code might be best applied? Should you develop two separate apps, one for iOS, one for Android, or should you have native languages? In the end, that's what we try to do with Landing Jobs with some companies. And I'm quite sure when we leave tech, the market is a bit more scattered, of course, but it's also quite easy, and there's an opportunity there as well to explore. So as soon as you cross the chasm, as a certain book refers to, it becomes quite easy to get your name out there and to start growing your tech team here. I remember Cloudflare, who came on board, I don't know, 2 years ago, I guess, nearly 2 years ago, in 2019, just pre-pandemic. And at the moment, they already grew their office in Portugal quite extensively by promoting their core, I mean, security, infrastructure. We're here having a really strong office culture. They have these sardines, which is a very Portuguese thing, the Portuguese Cloudflare sardine. And yes, so I'll definitely recommend communities, and because I mean, in the end, job boards and recruitment agencies, I mean, they won't really they'll capture different sides of the market, different types of people, but they're not as scalable as making the name for yourself. And there are a lot of players, Landing Jobs included, who can help you with that.
True. So would you say that just talking about the different sectors of employment in different industries, would you say that the tech sector and the digital IT sector is definitely the way forward in terms of where the jobs are, or is it a bit more scattered as well?
Well, when it comes to the future, I mean, where jobs are, I guess that's subjective. So today, there are also a lot of opportunities in outside tech, but of course, I mean, not only in Portugal, throughout Europe, the tech market is very, very hot. But I would say that the reason the other markets are scattered is because today they do not have because companies, when they come to Portugal, they look for the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which we are also great at. So, of course, we have a competitive advantage there. Maybe when it comes to sales, and this is actually something I was discussing with the company the other day, there is not a strong, I don't know, sale. There's a lot of marketing content out there, definitely, but when it comes to sales and business development, I would say, for example, in that area, where is the talent? Where are people? I mean, they're quite spread across the country, but I wouldn't say that there's only room for tech in Portugal. We have a lot of from artists and from creative backgrounds. There's a lot of great work being done there to also, as I mentioned, marketing, social sciences. And of course, today, the big bucks might be on tech, but I mean, tomorrow, of course, they will also be, but reskilling and as I used to say, probably an electricist or a plumber is paid more than a tech professional today by the hour. So we never know what tomorrow may bring.
That's so true. No, I totally agree. Also, just thinking about the residency options, I know a lot of internationals are looking at working in Portugal, and also if the benefits or incentives of obtaining residency in the country come through. James, do you have anything? Maybe you could share some tips on how people can kind of use the employment as a way of getting residency, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess one thing I must say is that in terms of our overall, migration policy, it is one of the most, let's say, expansive globally, not just in Europe, in the sense that there has been a lot of work done over the last several years, starting from about 2000 global financial crisis, right, 2012, 2013, in order to attract, more talent, international talent, highly qualified talent. And they've done this in a way which is, I mean, there are so many different visa types or residency visa types that we have available. I think that André mentioned a few of those before, whether it's, your tech visa, which, is sort of a fast track for very highly qualified talent. Companies do need to obviously be certified prior. But these sort of standards and processes have been put in place where they were non-existent before. We have your D2 visas, whether it's as a freelancer, because we're getting a lot of freelancers that are coming in, a lot of digital nomads or location independent. I think that's the new buzzword for it. People coming in. So there's that option. Within the D2, you have the entrepreneurs, the entrepreneur residency visa route as well. And then you have, your startup visa, which was mentioned. So we have a number of residency visas which are available. And I think one of the great things is, so there's something for everybody, right? We also have another really sort of practical visa type, residency visa type, which is called the D7. It's an own income visa. And I say that's a great option for some, because those people that aren't quite sure about things at the moment, or they're at a certain stage with life or with business, or they want to try something out, gives them the opportunity to come here and sort of get a feel for things, connect and network as quickly as they want to. And then through that, they can start their business, or they can, it's quite flexible in that sense, right? You just need to be able to sort of prove that you have enough money to sustain you over a period of a year, right? So there are a number of different options out there. I think one of the greatest things about the residency visas, and take into consideration the world that we live in today, the fact that the residency visas all lead towards a path of citizenship over a 5-year period, I think that's something important to note as well, because, I think that COVID aside, the last few years have been a little rocky in different parts of the world, and this sort of having a potential second citizenship is always a nice thing to have. We never know who's going to come up in power and change everything. But I mean, this is like an extra sort of an extra thing that Portugal offers, right? And the good thing is that over a 5-year period, people really become a part of the community, become a part of the country, and they really embrace that. There are some nations that don't allow for that. Yeah, you can be living there for 20 years or 30 years, and now COVID's hit, and there was like second-class citizens, and Portugal doesn't do that, right? So we saw that they really stuck to their word when it means giving, immigrants or that live here the same rights as others. So there are a lot of options out there, and it's very welcoming in that sense. So it's at every level, right? It's not just it's at every level.
Can I add just something to James? Look, we have quite awesome visas, but at the end of the day, what I think that matters the most is the companies are really open. In the sense that if you're in France or in Spain and you don't speak either French or Spanish, it's really hard for you to get a job because none of the population speak English. And you can see in this webinar, Stephanie doesn't speak Portuguese. It's not at least her first language. And she's running this webinar for Startup Portugal. So, which means that the companies are quite actually open for people outside, especially because it's a country with 10 million people. And sometimes the Portuguese companies, the way that they're born, like the startups, they're born to be global. And sometimes we have other engineers or other marketeers like me that they have experience of a country with 200 million people, which is really different from 10 million people. And we need talent. So it's not just that we have the visas, but actually you can get a job. Meaning like, it's not just the visa, but we can actually, if you apply for a company, there is a high probability that if you have the right experience that they're going to employ you. So for instance, I used to work for Beta-E, which is an accelerator here in Lisbon. And it was a team of 70 people. And out of them, around 20 were foreigners. And the official language in the company, it's English. So all the internal communication goes in English. Everything goes in English. So see, this is beautiful, and it doesn't happen in other countries. So just saying that's not just the visas, but also you really get a real opportunity at those companies.
That's the question I was going to ask. It's like, I know that a lot of people from outside, especially in the UK, get nervous about applying for jobs in Portugal because they don't speak the language and they think that that's a restriction or like a precursor to needing a job here, which isn't necessarily the case. It does help, of course. But it's not always the front runner for as a key factor for getting employed on that. So Pedro, do you want to maybe tell us about what are the key, maybe the 3 top values that entrepreneurs or employers are looking for staff at the moment?
So, I mean, I would say that, and I'll avoid the obvious the skills and the right experience. Of course, I mean, they're always looking for sometimes they're looking for too much, right? Sometimes we call them the unicorns. They're looking for a unicorn and they don't know that they don't exist, right? But in the end of the day, just firstly building up on what Fernando was saying, definitely, and I would say as soon as I heard that the residency would be coming up in 2021, this really makes me very, very interested in seeing it roll out, because there are actually a lot of companies who struggle with employing international talent, and the more we get ahead of the market and allow anyone to become a Portuguese resident, or maybe not anyone, but pretty much anyone to become a Portuguese resident and work and have sign an employment contract with a Portuguese company, that will really even improve the value that we're creating. What are employers looking for in talent? I would say that at the moment, autonomy. and self-starters, because I mean, if we look at how onboardings have changed, before you probably had like companies organizing weeks or months of onboardings and induction plans where all the new hires would sit and get through a lot of material, and then they will shadow someone, look at the calls, ask for questions in the office. Well, we don't have any of that now, right? So even as landing jobs, we hired for our company as well, of course. And as an hiring manager, and this is something that in different events I've managed to validate with different speakers, is definitely we need to be able to know that people are, as we say in Portuguese, as a very Portuguese quality, desenrascados. We make it happen. We might not exactly know how, but we will Google it. We will look for something that has been done, and we will get it done before we actually ask how is this done. So we are quite autonomous, and this is definitely something that the market is valuing at the moment, because I can't see the person that I hired 3 weeks ago. I mean, of course, we could just have those awkward Zoom calls, which some companies implemented in the beginning of the pandemic, where everyone in the team would be in a Zoom call muted with the cams on. But I think that's quite a despotic way of managing people. And I'll definitely believe that one, the autonomy, the way that the person is able to self-discipline as well. And then at the same time, collaboration with different stakeholders. And I think when we talk of Portuguese people being welcoming, having the 7th best English in the world, I think this has a lot to do with this. As Fernando was saying, Portuguese companies are born to be global. Portuguese talent was even in some points in our lives grown to go abroad. For the good and the bad. And we definitely see the world as we need to say hi, because in Portugal, we don't have enough. That might no longer be the case, right? I mean, we're having a lot of things happening in Portugal to keep people here. And it's great to see how the trend has been decreasing over the last few years.
That's true. Yeah, I totally agree. And just finally, our last question, just because of time. James, could you maybe just touch on the tax implications associated with running a company? I know it's a very like lethargic kind of conversation, but it's the top question that we've been getting in the last month. It's like people just want to know why should they choose Portugal for their taxes? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not a tax expert. My colleague at Moviinn, so Pedro, and we have José, they're the tax experts. But having said that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Pedro, Fernando, I think our corporate tax rate at the moment is at about 21%. Yeah. So, I mean, this is something that's always been in debate of, how we can actually bring our tax rate down. So there's that. I mean, we do need to take, if you incorporating a company here and you are obviously hiring as well, building a team, you're going to be concerned about, the income tax, right? So what is the tax on salaries? Because this might impact one way or another your competitiveness on an international level in terms of attracting talent. I think one of the good things that we've done in order to sort of curve that in a sense, or not get around it, but make it a little bit more attractive, is actually bringing in the NHR program, right? So the non-habitual residence regime, which is a tax rate regime where you have a flat rate of 20%. So it's usually for highly qualified talent, and highly qualified talent is quite broad, right? So we can, whether it's tech or whether it's art, it's not just for the tech industry. Yeah. So there is an official list for this, and registering is quite straightforward. And then the employee would be taxed at a 20% rate instead of, I think we got to about, it's a progressive rate up to about 48% usually, right? And that 20% is applicable for a 10-year period. So that's something interesting that people like to explore. So on an individual tax level, that's that. On the corporate tax level, as I mentioned, I mean, we have a flat rate of 21%. I mean, we do have circumstances where, you know, in the initial year, there's a certain breaks, or if you haven't, you know, reached a certain threshold in terms of your EBITDA, then it can be decreased as well. Yeah, I think we could have a whole session about tax. It's usually, that's at Moviinn Talking. It's usually our biggest thing, and it's like, yeah, and we have 2 tax guys on that. But in a nutshell, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same for us. It's like at least once a week we get asked what are the tax incentives for like bringing your company, especially now with Brexit and everything going on and the competitive rate across Europe. Portugal is definitely an option.
Stephanie, I think there's one that's also pretty interesting, especially because, you know, we are talking Startup Portugal and made of Lisboa and, you know, the tech industry, not only just for tech, but I think there is a program which is called CIFID in Portugal as well, which is a sort of rebate system or a tax relief system for you know, investment that is made into R&D, which I think that's a pretty important one to talk about as well. So that's been around for quite a while, and so people that have made investment, for example, last year in 2020, were taking care of this. I think now in May and June, in order to get more of a tax relief based on the investments that they actually made in R&D, which is a great way to sort of incentivize more R&D investments.
That's so true.
There is a great question at the chat. I think James, you'll be maybe the right person to answer, which is how hard is it for a company to set up a Spanish company to set up a branch in Lisbon? I just want to give a heads up that at the end of the year, it'll be way easier because with the residency visa, voucher, I was messing with startup voucher, but that's for James and Stephanie to answer.
Yeah, I mean, setting up a company here, a branch, it takes a bit of work, but it's nothing too complicated. I mean, what would happen, the Spanish company, let's say if the Spanish company is holding this branch, we would register the Spanish company here as a non-resident company, as a foreign company, and then we'd incorporate the subsidiary and then connect these two. So it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, it's not too cumbersome at all. Many terms of bureaucratic issues. Yeah, I mean, we usually can get this done in a week or so. Yeah, so
that's great. And then there was another question. So yeah, we got roughly 5 minutes left. So I'll just jump into that last question someone asked. The different programs that we've been talking about and opportunities, is this only technically available for international expats, or are Portuguese local people also actually able to access some of these opportunities?
Yeah. Portuguese are. I mean, the NHR is not exclusive. The condition with NHR, whether you are a foreigner or an expat or Portuguese, is that you had lived abroad outside of Portugal for the last 5 years. So whether you're a Portuguese repat coming back, or whether you're a foreigner that was even here like 7 years ago, or you're coming for the first time, the condition is that you have not been a tax resident in Portugal for the last 5 years. And one important thing with this NHR item is that when you do become a tax resident in the country, let's say you become a tax resident today on my birthday, 28th of May, you have until the 31st of March next year, the following year, to then apply for your NHR. Yeah. Sometimes people sort of mix with the dates, but it's the 31st of the following year, which is a deadline.
Okay, no, that's great to know. Thank you. And then Pedro, just for you, I know that your platform is available to internationals, but it's also available to local Portuguese staff, people across the EU, who can kind of apply it to your platform.
Of course. Thank you, Stephanie, for giving me the hint. I'm not, I didn't come to pitch, no, but basically landing jobs, our goal is to connect and to help companies hiring tech talent. we started in Portugal. We are made in Portugal, and André was so kind as to put us in the pipeline for unicorns. Who knows when? And basically, we started in Portugal, and this means that actually most of our community, we have around 150,000 users registered, tech professionals all over the world. 40,000 of them are Portuguese. And I mean, I deal directly with a lot of Portuguese companies, and not only Portuguese companies, but companies hiring in Portugal. And it has actually been it's rewarding to see, like, every week you get to know about new projects and new companies. I want to move in. I want to come to Portugal to create my tech team in Portugal. And yes, so the way we do this is the talent signs up for the platform. We have a talent team also supporting them with getting them the right jobs. And then we have the business team going with the companies, helping them finding the right talent and making sure that the marketplace works, which in tech, as some of the attendees might know, and yes, you might know, is not always easy. There's no invisible hand. There's a very visible hand, which must be put in place to get things right.
No, that's so true. Thank you. I think that's it. We don't seem to have any more questions. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking this time. James, on your birthday, for joining us and like just giving us a bit of insight into Portugal and the ins and outs of what it looks like to kind of relocate and open a company here. That's great. So to those in the audience, if you're looking for relocation support, Moviinn is definitely available. Please reach out to them. We've got the information if you need it, as well as to Pedro if you're looking for hiring local staff, international staff. It's definitely available for you. And yeah, once again, if you have any other questions about the Portuguese startup ecosystem, you can reach out to us on our one-stop shop. It's available on the Startup Portugal website. And I think that's a wrap. Yeah, thank you very much.